storm down here as if it was published yesterday.
That's good. That's good to hear. It's still my wife's favorite.
Really? Yeah. Um, so we will just talk for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll edit this down to the best parts. It's not live right now, so if you make a mistake, it's not a big deal.
Okay. Okay.
So um, tell me, just a sort of general question here to start out with. You write in the prologue that you were reading about the Lusitania sort of on a whim, but why did you keep reading and then eventually research the story? And obviously you thought there was enough for a book there.
Yeah. I guess I think mainly it's because I've always had sort of a maritime thing going on. Always liked ships and maritime disasters and so forth. And Lusitania was always kind of, that's one of the standouts, you know, in addition to Titanic and certain other lost ships. You know, I was really sort of always kind of on the fence about maybe doing something about the Lusitania, and what I lacked was a reason for doing it now. You know, why do it now? And suddenly I realized that there was this anniversary coming. This is the point I'm working on the book about 5 years ago, and I started thinking about doing it. So I thought, well, you know, that's a reason. So it kind of tipped the balance. You know, it's just a tiny, just enough on that side of the scale to make me think, okay, maybe I can do it now. And so then that's when I started doing more reading, and that's when I realized, yeah, this is a great story, and that's when I proceeded.
So, you know, so this anniversary is coming up, but do you think that there are still lessons for sort of political leaders nowadays from the story of the Lusitania, or is it a story that, you know, has international relations and laws changed so much that what happened with the Lusitania is really a story particular to its own time?
I do feel that the Lusitania story is particular to its time. I'm not sure that there are any great lessons to be learned from the situation for us today, except maybe for the idea that, you know, what happened in the wake of the Lusitania, and what is actually sort of not really well known. I think most people think the Lusitania was sunk, and the next day we were in the war. And that's not at all obviously what happened. And I think that there is a lesson to be learned from President Wilson's response to the Lusitania. He responded with great restraint, great respect for the dangers of war and what war actually meant. And he was absolutely bound to keep America out of World War I at that point, and succeeded really for two full years after the event. And I think restraint, there's a lesson there for us. I think restraint is not a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, we're sort of dealing with that in the Congress actually today with Netanyahu.
Yeah.
So, but tell me more generally. I mean, you mentioned that you started work on this 5 years ago. What are the elements that have to come to?
Conception was 5 years
ago. Okay, yeah. So, what are the elements on any book idea? What are the elements that have to come together for you, because you're going to be spending several years on it, right?
Yeah. The difficulty in coming up with ideas is that a lot of things have to come together to make it a viable project. First of all, there has to be a built-in narrative arc. That's the most important thing. You know, something that will propel the story along. And of course, in the case of Lusitania, I mean, it's right there. I mean, here's the ship that sets out on one day and 7 days later is sunk by a German submarine. I mean, it's a classic suspense arc. But then beyond that, you also really need to have a deep reservoir of archival materials, very dense, rich archival materials, if you're going to bring a story like that alive. And happily, the Lusitania really has that in spades. I mean, ultimately, that's what finally made me decide to do the book after thinking, okay, well, maybe there's a reason now because of the anniversary. And then after starting my initial reading, it was when I realized how deep and rich this seam of material was that I started thinking, I don't think this has been used to maximum advantage yet by any prior writer on the subject of Lusitania. I saw it as suddenly as more an exercise in suspense. I really put on my Alfred Hitchcock hat, and maybe I can turn this into a nonfiction narrative that is full of real life suspense, and that was the fun part of the whole project.
Yeah. So sort of which elements of which facts to drop at which point in the narrative, and
yeah. When you have a body of material like intercepted and decoded telegrams from the German submarine, and when you've got love letters written by President Wilson to his girlfriend at the time, and all these materials, it was just like it was almost too much to deal with. It was just wonderful for me.
Yeah, it was nice to learn that he was a little bit of a sap. You think of him as this professor type,
You think of him as a sort of a stodgy, professory, sort of schoolmarmish guy. Then you read these letters, and I read dozens of them. I could only fit a few quotations from the letters into the narrative in a coherent way. But the letters were just spectacular. I mean, just such passion, such longing. This from a president I've always sort of dismissed as a stiff.
Yeah. Well, I interview only living people, obviously, but you do have this nice description of Admiral Fisher as, I think, a large bulb-eyed toad, and I was wondering if one of the pleasures of writing about people who are deceased is that you can kind of have fun with that. Is that fun for you? Or?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if Fisher were still alive, I might have chosen my words differently, but the fact is that's the perfect description for Jackie Fisher. so it frees you in a way. At the same time, you're also deeply constrained by adherence to the historical record. So the problem is, yes, okay, so I can make descriptions and paint word pictures in a certain way, but I can't talk to the people involved to flesh out their stories. I can't call up Fisher on the phone and say, hey, so did you guys have anything to do with this? I can't call these sources and get their life stories. But it does make it kind of fun.
Yeah. And so in that context, I was intrigued to learn that Captain Turner really did not like the social aspects of his job and entertaining. And how did you find that out? From letters, or?
That is in a number of histories that were done about the Lusitania War dealt with that particular trait of his. But there are also accounts from his first officer and also from his housekeeper, Mabel Every. And in one of those is when he is reported to have called passengers bloody monkeys. And he just did it. Apparently, Turner was a sailor of the old school. He grew up. That is, in terms of his career, grew up on the big square riggers and so forth. And he was a no-nonsense sailorman, as he referred to himself.
Yeah. Bloody Monkeys does pretty much say it all, right?
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah.
So has it ever happened for you that you've gotten down the road of research and maybe even writing and realized that there either wasn't enough there or that you didn't want to spend several years on that subject?
Yeah. It's actually happened a number of times. Whenever I get an idea for a project, I always do a book proposal, and sometimes it's really more of a test proposal, just to see, is the material there? Is the narrative there? Of course, at that point, you never really know. You're taking an educated guess as to whether there's enough material. But generally speaking, you know if there's enough material the thing you don't know until you go through this exercise is like, does it make a book? You know, is there really a book there? Is this narrative strong enough to propel readers through 300 pages and provide a satisfying ending? And you never really know that until you get that proposal done. And if you're still happy after you've done the proposal is a sample chapter, you know, an essay about what you plan to do and how you plan to do it, and then a chapter outline, you know, capsule outline of how the chapters are going to go in the book. Once you're done with that, if you still like the project, it's pretty good indication that it's going to work. And if your agent and the editor like it, then all the cylinders are firing and you're good to start.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because am I wrong to assume that, you know, with your success and at this point in your career, that you probably don't have to write proposals, right?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because my agent and I have we've talked about this, and he has said, you know, you don't need to do proposals now. You know, you can just, you know, do it in a letter. And I'll tell you though, I will not do that, because proposals give you a very clear sense of the path that lies ahead when the day comes to actually begin work. When you get that contract from your publisher, it's kind of a terrifying moment, because suddenly it's all real. Suddenly you got to get to work, and you have a proposal, you have a roadmap, and you can just start in right away, throw the angst away, because you've already got this thing that they have all signed off on. And there's a certain legal side to this also. That, you know, publishers, if a book diverges too far from what was proposed, a publisher can, you know, decide that this is an unacceptable manuscript, and then you are really stuck. If you have a letter, you know, there's a lot of leeway there on both sides for you know, you to say, well, I delivered a better thing than I proposed in the letter, and for the publisher to say, well, we don't want that thing that you delivered. Whereas if you have a very detailed proposal and you follow that proposal, you've got a pretty good basis for saying, well, you still need to pay me. You know, it's that kind of thing. So, but really, it's all about easing the anxiety that's associated with books. You know, there are days when you just think, oh my gosh, is this really going to work? And if you have your proposal, what you got to do is turn to the chapter outline and say, yeah, this is going to work. I know where to start now. I'm going to go to this part of the research and see what I can find.
Yeah, that's a nice lesson.
Yeah.
So last question. Is there one character in this book you feel the most sort of connected to or drawn to?
Well, when you phrase it that way, if you're talking about my favorite character, I'm telling you, it's actually Dwight Harris. He's not that big a character, but he's a young guy, very enthusiastic guy, and he was thrilled to have survived the disaster. And he wrote this lovely account that's full of exclamation points. And he's just so glad to have survived, but also so glad to have been a part of history. So it's a great letter. But it's funny when you ask, who do I sort of feel sympathy for, or feel, you phrased it, maybe in more in tune with, or I gotta say it's the submarine commander. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I mean, I really feel for the guy in a way. I mean, on the one hand, he killed 1,200 people. On the other hand, you know, he was doing his job. He's a young guy, a nice guy. His crew loved him. Other people in the submarine service thought he was great. One of his friends, who was a fellow submarine captain, said of him that he couldn't hurt a fly. You know, killed 1,200 people, yeah, but can't hurt a fly. But I just felt for him, because, you know, here's this awful patrol, you know, haunted by fog, chased by destroyers. Nothing's going right. Finally, the guy just gives it up, and he's turning around, literally turning around to go back to Germany, when this prize of the century appears in his periscope.
Yeah, no, it's very touching. So, well, great. Well, congrats on this. Good luck with the launch, and thanks for talking to me.
Okay, how's this look in the background and so forth? Does this work?
Oh, yeah, we're totally fine.
It's good? Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Well, it's first for me. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, okay, have a good day.
Take care. Enjoy Austin.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.